Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Blue Butterfly Effect podcast. Um, Today's topic is this is probably going to be a two-parter type of episode, I think. Um, I think Ashley and I have, gone through so much growth that I think we've had so many conversations around how much we've grown, what we've realized, a lot of things we have left behind. And so we wanted to create a podcast of around 10 things we wish we could have told our younger self or that we wish we knew when we were younger.
And I think it's an interesting time to bring this in because I feel like although you and I are different ages, there's a 13-year difference. It's been interesting that our evolutions have been pretty similar
Hmm.
over the past few years. Like some of the things that we have struggled with or worked on healing, um, and just stepping into like our voices and our authenticity even more and finding momentum in our work in a new way. Um, I think it's a really beautiful conversation to have because we've been different paths but similar journeys. And you and I get to talk about these things and the things that and the healing that's taken. This has been a powerful, gosh, like 4 years
Yes.
for the two of us.
Yes.
And the
Yeah.
podcast has been such a catalyst. I know it has been for me a catalyst in
Mhm.
my own healing. It's been like giving myself a mentorship and finding my voice and getting comfortable with my voice. And it's also created a relationship with you that's evolved in so
Mhm.
many ways. So, yeah, I like this topic.
I love this. And just so the listeners are aware, both Ashley and I are Libra ascendants. So that matters in that one, when you create or find someone in your life who has the same ascendant as you, or the same moon sign as you, there is a really these are really significant partners or pairings or relationships in this lifetime. So I found it interesting when you and I met, and it was kind of like an instant knowing of something. It was really, I remember it wasn't, I mean, I don't want to say strange, but it was so distinct. It was such a
Mhm.
distinct feeling. So just kind of a fun astro fact for everyone out there. When you meet someone with your same ascendant or same moon sign, you have very specific assignments with each other, if you will. And also, I mean, as Libra ascendants, for any Libra ascendant, sun, moon out there, think about the significant transformation that you've been through in the last 4 years.
Mhm.
Uh, that has meant a lot. And for Libra energy in general, it has been about an uprooting of your upbringing and individuating yourself into your own person. So that's especially true for that sign.
I love when you share those like astro bites or astro tips. It helps. It's so validating.
Yeah.
And I think this conversation is appropriate regarding that transformation, the individuation that you were talking about for maybe the way we were raised, because my younger self, even so I'll be 50, my 30-year-old self, I wish I could have told her these things. I
Hmm.
wish like she would have known them. So
Yeah.
anyway, you want to get us started?
Yeah. So, number one on our list is this thought: if I could tell younger Millie something, it's like, you don't have to be available for everyone. You don't have to please everyone. And you are absolutely allowed to say no.
Mm.
I mean, that I think is such a huge lesson for so many people in so many ways. But I don't, I don't ever underestimate how much more true that probably is for women.
Mm.
Um, and when I think back to the inability, I guess I had to say no to a lot of things, circumstances, people, decisions in my life, was so much because I was raised in a way where you wouldn't you it wasn't a good idea to rock the boat, right? It wasn't a good idea to say no. It
Mm,
was like, let's just keep things moving, let's keep things peaceful. And so that became such a part of my inner weaving that that's how I led my life for so long. And so coming out of that, the saying no, the not being available, not just for when people call for something, but really just being available for certain dynamics and certain energies,
mm.
you begin to realize how much you can actually say no to. And
Oh, yeah.
that in itself is a process that I think needs to be practiced and learned, but it becomes so, so important
Mhm.
in so many ways.
Oh, and when you're talking about, being raised that way, I was not allowed to say no. Like, it would light my mother on fire if,
Mhm.
saying no. And I think about the things where, like, strangers or relatives would come into the house and give so and so a hug, and you didn't get to have the choice, right? In those moments of whether you accepted hugs or you spoke to people or could say no thank you. My son goes no thank you, and I love it. But I think there were a lot of children that weren't, like, saying no was an affront to parents.
Yeah.
And it takes away your choice and your ability to say it. And when we're talking about availability, I think one of my biggest regrets in raising children was I was working for a company, in human resources. I was working for a company and I was working from home, but they wanted me to be on call all the time. And I had just had my oldest Jake, and he was a little firecracker, just really struggled being in this world. Um, and it was really hard to soothe them and things like that, but I remember feeling like I had to be on my phone all the time in case something happened with the company. And I would
Mhm.
check my email all the time, and then if something would happen, I felt like I had to engage. And then here's my child who I'm trying to comfort and soothe, who's like, I'm nursing at the same time. And then there's this, like, all these emails coming through and this expectation that I need to engage in this dialogue with the company. And I regret not setting boundaries. I regret not putting my phone down. I regret that my nervous system, and I say I regret. I have a lot of compassion for myself that I didn't know how, but I
Mhm.
also wish that I would have known that the world wasn't going to fall apart if I put my phone down in those moments and I didn't try to balance a crying baby and this, like, potential, mess that was happening at the company. Do you know what I'm
My
saying?
yes.
And and the stress it caused, I wish I could go back and just put the phone down and tell my younger self, like, "Hey, they're gonna figure it out. You can get back to them later. You don't have to navigate these 2 things at the same time." And I know I'm not the only mom that struggled with that.
Mhm.
Um, so I just would like to say to anybody, if they're listening, like, it will be okay.
Mhm.
It will
Mhm.
be okay. And you have to make a choice of, like, what's more important. And my son in those moments was definitely more important, and my nervous system.
Right. I can't help but think how a lot of these things tend to happen when we're young, right? And
Mhm.
I think that there is something to, yes, of course, you know more when you're older, therefore you do better and choose differently. But it does really beg the question, or it does really beg to question those that are responsible for raising these young, people, like young women like us, that
Mhm.
we didn't have that.
Mhm.
We didn't have anybody to teach us to say that it was okay to say no to certain
Mhm.
things, that it was okay to listen to something inside of us that said, this doesn't feel right.
Mhm.
And it's when you really think about it, it's so powerful. It's so powerful to be able to say no, to be
Yeah.
okay with saying no.
Mhm.
And I think that the I I mean, at least for me, what I struggled with the most was the thought of rejection, right? Or the thought
Yeah.
of being judged, of upsetting someone else.
Mm.
And so it was all at the expense of myself,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so the saying no, learning to say no has been one of the most powerful things um, that I think I've come across. I think even saying no to certain narratives and belief systems about myself, like no more of that.
Mhm.
There's something so powerful about the no that then opens you up to what you truly want to say yes to. And it allows room for you to figure out what it is that you want to say yes to. Because I think we can
Yeah.
also get lost in saying all the yeses to everyone else. And it's like, where are you in all of that?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah. And the saying no to people, you know, I was taught like to it would feel too scary to say no. Like it just became like it's too
Mhm.
scary because what if that person's upset with me? So you never really learn to navigate someone's disappointment. Like they're going to be
Right.
disappointed and that's okay. Like we can get through it. I can say no, you can be disappointed or angry and we can get through it. We're not taught that at
Mm-hmm.
all. And I remember I hope I don't butcher this, but I just remember reading this thing one time that was talking about like your moral compass being based in fear rather than true values and like integrity. And I realized that for so long, my moral compass was based in fear of getting in trouble. You know,
Yes.
like I didn't do the thing because I didn't want to get in trouble rather than because I knew the difference between right and wrong. And I think that's the difference between like authoritarian parenting and compassionate parenting is that authoritarian parent teaches you to live your life through fear and being good through fear
Mm-hmm.
rather than like really believing in the thing you're living, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so messed up.
Oh my God. It's so hard. That's such a hard way to live. It's such a hard way to be raised
Oh,
and to walk around with that fear of everything and always in everyone. Oh my God.
yeah, it's something that I've said over I do not want my children to be afraid of me. I do not. I do not want me to like if I get upset or I say no, they can't come to me. I don't want it to be fear to be a part of it. You
Yeah.
know, it's just like that's not love to me.
Right. Right. I
No.
think I think that is a really great segue to the second thing, which is chaos and drama and how much it doesn't have to be a part of your life, how much you can create healthy boundaries around not letting it into your life and knowing when you are doing that and taking responsibility. I think the
Mm,
inability to say no ends up creating a lot more chaos in our lives because there is a misalignment in,
mhm.
to your point, values of what we truly value and what we're actually living in the world. And that
Yes.
creates chaos because there's a
Mhm,
dissonance in energy, right?
mhm,
And so, oh my God, chaos and drama. I think so. I think so much of my life was chaos and drama. And a lot of it were things that I could not help for a really long time because they were coming from my parents. It was coming from like our situation. But then when I got old enough, I was still finding myself in chaos and drama. And I think it took me a while to realize how much I sought it out because I didn't know otherwise.
mhm.
And so I think one of the things I would tell my younger self is pay attention to how you feel on a daily basis.
Mm.
And if you're finding that you are constantly in chaos and drama, just know that that's not normal. That that's not
No.
the way that life is meant to be lived.
No. I wish I could have asked myself the question, what has your nervous system been wired for or to? And what
Mhm,
do you want like it to be wired for or what do you want it to resonate with? Because
mhm,
we recreate that dynamic of chaos and drama that we lived with like you said.
mhm,
And I remember as I started to slow down it actually felt good, but I've had clients report to me that slowing down and peace is very scary for them, very unsettling for them.
mhm,
Um, And I think that's something, if you are drawn to chaos and drama, it's something to keep an eye on. Like, does peace scare me because there was no peace in my home? Or when there was peace in my home, it meant something bad was going to happen. I mean, that was something I also knew, that if it was quiet, that meant something's coming. So, like, really asking yourself these questions, like, what was the culture of my house growing up? And what am
Mhm,
I wired for? And how do I want to my nervous system, why do I want how do I want my nervous system to be wired? What do I want my nervous system to be wired for? I think is really important. And then to be intentional about that. And so as I remember slowing down, I remember I had friends around me that were wired for chaos and drama. And I would watch them, and it would be like putting one fire out and then there would be another fire. And I was like,
mhm,
wow. And I know I'd been there. So I don't say that from a judgmental perspective, but I noticed then I was choosing people that were wired for chaos and drama. And then I
mhm.
had to make a choice, like, okay. And my spidey sense goes off if I start to engage with somebody who's like got a lot of chaos and drama in their life. And I'm like, okay, am I being drawn to this person because it's like the old version of me,
Mhm.
or, I have to ask myself those questions.
Oh, that's so good. I like that because I think it reminds you that if that is something that was a part of your life for a long time and your nervous system was at some point fully wired in that way,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I think we are prone, without even realizing it, to fall into those types of dynamics,
Yes.
right? And so I think keeping ourselves present and in check becomes really important because I mean, at least one of the things that I remember realizing is I used to equate chaos and drama in romantic relationships as love,
Oh, yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
I mean,
That's a
I
big
say that
one.
now and I think about it now and I'm like, oh, that is twisted, right?
Mm.
And again, not from a judgmental place, it's just what I knew.
Yeah.
And so when I started asking myself questions like, is this supposed to suck and hurt this much? Because I don't think it is, right? And then and then, you know, those types of inquiries kind of taking me on the path that I am now, um, we have to be very mindful and aware of the relationships we're choosing and how they make us feel because at a nervous system level there is a wiring. There is a neurological pathway that is used to just that chemicals are used to just streaming through that neurological pathway because that's what's there,
Yes.
right? And so we physically literally do not know any better, right?
No.
So we can do all of the work and all of the things, read all of the books and do all of the things and still choose certain types of relationships or still choose to have certain types of fights or arguments with our partner or still choose to engage in certain types of like dynamics or conversations with friends like it's it can be very sneaky the way that this shows up and this isn't about I don't think this is about being so hyper vigilant with yourself or inflexible
Mm-mm.
but I think the more you pay attention, the more you realize, oh, that's how it happens. That's
Yeah.
how I allow it to happen. That's how I do it. And
Hmm.
that those little moments, those little pieces of information become so valuable because it's in those little nuggets that you have those aha moments and you're like, "Oh my god, this is how I do it in other ways. And this is how deep it goes."
Yeah. I mean, those chemicals that you're talking about, the addictive nature of chaos and drama, and also the dopamine you get from reuniting, after you've had a fight or you've been pushed apart and then coming back together, people get high off that dopamine of making up and coming back together over and over again. And so that's when you intentionally decide, okay, where do I want my brain chemicals to come from? Because the chemicals can be similar, but there's like good dopamine and bad dopamine. And so, do
Mhm,
I want the good dopamine that comes from like a more loving, safe, exciting relationship in a different way? Or
mhm.
do I want the addictive chemicals of the negative dopamine coming from what you're saying?
And I mean, I think that's such a good point because I think it's important to remember that because it is such a chemical experience,
Yeah.
you have to remember that you may not actually know what peace feels like. Like, I remember, I mean, even up until like 2 years ago, it was 2, 3 years ago. Yeah, we're 2024. Yeah, like 2020, 2021, even into 2022, I had to really practice being in peace, like living a much slower pace. Like
Mm,
it was, I remember it brought up a lot of fear. Like if I'm not doing something, then that means if I'm not producing, then that means I'm going to be broke, right? Like
mhm.
money was a really big thing. Um, if something is not happening, if I'm not making something happen, then something bad is going to happen.
Right.
And so to walk myself through that day in, day out, which it is a day in, day out thing,
Yes.
it requires so much compassion and so much intention.
Mhm.
And I think that it requires that we look at each day truly as a new beginning.
Yes.
Because I think if we don't, I think if we're like, "Oh, I have been living in peace for 23 days, and then on the 24th day, I fucked it all up." Like, you know what I mean? I
Yes.
say that the reason that I say that so poignantly is that we think so linearly.
Yes.
And there's always this, like, outcome type of mentality. And that is only setting yourself up for failure when you are working with things that have to do with chemicals in your brain.
Absolutely. Like, you have to treat, like you said, every day, even every moment. Like
Yeah,
yesterday, I had from the moment I woke up till about 3 o'clock, I had such an expansive day. I had a beautiful therapy session, celebratory, and I don't know what happened. I think I was on Instagram uploading some stuff and took in unconsciously some energy. I was like, but something
gosh.
happened and I just plummeted. I
Mhm.
plummeted, and all of a sudden I felt like someone had taken egg beater to my insides. And I was like, whoa, what is this? But thankfully, I've done enough work and I've been mindful enough to know that, like, okay, whatever my mind is saying or whatever's happening, I need silence. I need to go outside. I need to find some peace. Because, whatever I'm thinking isn't real. Whatever the stirred up, there's nothing really happening in this moment. It's just something happened. But my point being is that we can be peaceful and expansive and feel good, and then something can knock us off course. And
Yeah.
we get to come back.
Mhm.
And the point is not to stay on course the whole time. It's impossible as humans. The point is to figure out practices that bring us back over and over again to ourselves,
Exactly.
to the most authentic, grounded version of ourselves.
Right. And I think that what helps to, because I think that some people might be asking, "Well, what does that look like? Or what does that feel like?"
Mhm.
And honestly, in the simplest way, the way that I have learned to accept and now realize, oh, that's true, is you are okay right now.
Yeah.
Everything is okay right now.
Yeah.
Like right now, in this moment, where you are sitting, where you are standing, you are alive, you are well, you are moving, you have work, you are like your home. Like these are the things that go through my mind,
Mhm.
right? I'm
Like, what
able
is
to
true in this moment?
exactly what is
Mhm.
true in this moment.
Mhm.
And I think we're able to talk about this in this way because it's such a practice.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a practice. And so also to remind all of you that chaos and drama looks like a lot of different things. It's not just in relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think that's also a great segue to our third point, which the idea of having it all together by a certain age is something that in the past has created a lot of chaos in my head.
Yeah. In what
I
way?
I just think just I mean that thought, right? I'm whatever years old at any given moment in my life. Shouldn't I have the house, or shouldn't I be making a certain amount of money? For some people, is I should have the relationship. I should, like, all of the shoulds, and that, I mean, that takes you on a spin. That has taken me on a spin. Well, if I had just done that, and if I hadn't wasted time, and if, oh my God. And then next thing you know, it's been like a few hours and it's like, where did where did I go?
Right. Mm.
So the idea of having it all together by a certain age and letting go of that, I think astrology really helped me let go of that. Like,
Mm.
time is a construct. We live in cycles. Our lives go through seasons, and those seasons look differently than one another, and they happen at different moments in our life. So
Mm.
it's irrelevant, at least the way that I'm able to experience it right now. It's irrelevant that I'm 37, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree with you about the astrology. I was saying to my therapist yesterday, um, because we were talking, we've this year will have been 20 years that we've worked together. And, she turned 80 and I'm turning 50. And we
Wow.
were just talking about, she was talking about when I first walked into her office and how I just did not want to be there, but how I showed up. Oh, wow, it makes me teary eyed.
Mm,
And I was thinking about, like, how at this age, I feel like I'm finally, like, hitting a stride within myself. Like, I feel, like, more expansive. I feel more safe in the world. I just feel more healed than ever and more excited about what's next. And I could easily say, well, I waited till I was 50 to figure all this out. But when I look at the astrology, and I showed up in that woman's office weekly. Like, I've been in therapy for 20 years. I maybe took a break when I had kids, but then I
mm,
went back and forth. But anyway, it's not a judgment, but point being is I showed up. And she was like, "You showed up for 20 years. You've showed up."
mhm.
Um and I don't know that I could have done it any differently. And also, you just gave me a reading the other day, an astrological reading, and you talked about this moment in my life and that I'm in a new chapter. And I
Mhm.
really feel like between what my soul wanted to experience in this life and the astrology that points to it, I just feel like I'm right on time. And right on time on a soul level is way more important to me than the timeline of this human realm, which is a lie. It is a lie, a lie, a lie, lie. Don't believe it.
Don't believe the hype.
Don't. And I think we have to look at our life like, just because it says we should have a house at this age. Do we want a house? Do we want to take that on? Are we ready for that responsibility? Oh my
No.
God. No, right? It's a big responsibility
Huge.
that I just became ready for last year. So, anyway, my point being is, like, the soul's timeline, if your human and soul are walking together, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. If you
Yeah.
are walking that path with your soul by your side and you're co-creating with the divine, I am being serious. That's all that matters.
Mhm.
Human
I
judgment and ideas, forget it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, their human judgment and ideals are detrimental to the soul. I
Totally.
it's just like a big a big poop on the soul. I'm sorry. It's just, it's awful.
It's a big poop on the soul.
You know? And, one, because I've experienced feeling that heaviness,
Mm.
and in holding space for others, my God, do those timelines make us miserable.
Mm.
The "I am this age and I should be whatever. Everyone around me is at this stage and I should be that." It's like, no, 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 never, ever. You have a purpose. You came here to learn your own lessons, to rediscover the love that exists within you, and only your path is the thing that's going to bring you back to yourself. That
Right.
is the only purpose. Yes, there are different conduits. We can be creatives. We can do work that we love. We can do work that we don't love, whatever. But really, the soul came here to expand in ways that have nothing to do with this human timeline. Nothing. And I think, at least for me, in the last year particularly, maybe less, maybe less, there has been something about simply committing to the process of doing the things that I do and absolutely releasing the outcome that is just, I feel much more peaceful inside.
Mm,
And it has brought me back to remembering, oh, this is why I do what I do. And this is
yeah,
how life is meant to be lived. And I am taken care of. And I
mhm,
am on my own path. I am on my own path that is unfolding in a way that is purposeful and is happening for me. And I have a connection to spirit. I walk with spirit every day, with my angels, with my guides, with my ancestors. And so I say these things because these are things that I have cultivated through practice for several years now. And because this is also available for anyone. And so when you live this human life from that space, you become limitless in ways that are not measured by the human mind.
right.
Because the human construct and this human world are incredibly limited, and that's a shame.
It's such a shame. And I will tell you a secret that I think Millie and I have figured out. But if you want to know like what your journey will look like or how to evolve or what the next thing is for you, listen to your heart's desire because the soul speaks through your heart. And anytime I've listened to my heart's desire, it has led me on a path of adventure, curiosity, healing, exploration. It's been one of my greatest teachers, whatever that thing is. And when our mind chooses what's next, that will lead us to chaos and drama, and that will take us off any sort of course that we're like maybe destined to be on. But if you listen to the heart's desire, like the true heart's desire, not the ego's desire, you will
Mhm,
know what's next
mhm,
and you will know what your path looks like.
mhm,
And you will, if you allow it, you will be pleasantly surprised.
mhm. I think that, to put words to that, so someone might ask, well, what is that like? What can that look like? Or what can that
Mhm,
sound like? Right. Well, I think it's going to sound differently for everyone. But the way that it sounded to me, and I'll go back to just the most recent experience I've had over the last couple of months, is what is my heart's desire? And it was to feel peace.
mhm,
Okay. So then how do I function in my responsibilities as someone who works for themselves in the most peaceful way? What do I have to let go of, that, whether it's a belief system or it's certain things that I'm doing, that will bring me peace while I still meet my very adult responsibilities,
mhm,
right? And so this is the way that we work with the messages from the heart and from spirit,
mhm,
because spirits and our heart's messages are very simple, very simple. And we're like, well, what does that look like? Well, what does that mean? Well, it's like, okay, what would your life look if what your heart is desiring is peace?
mhm,
Chances are it requires a lot less. And the willingness to let those things go and surrender to the trust and the guidance of your heart,
mhm,
that right there is the task and the ride.
mhm. I love that. I love that so much. It's so true. And I'll give one example too, just because I think it's good to have.
Please, yeah.
So my heart's desire is came to me recently that that it wanted to grow flowers. Like my soul was like, I want to grow flowers. And I was like, really? You want to grow flowers? And so I have garden beds now and I'm growing flowers. And flowers are my not my only teacher right now, but they are. I heard that flowers are my teacher, and what they're teaching me about is abundance and scarcity, You
Mhm.
know, the interesting thing about flowers is the more you prune them, the more they grow. And so there's
Mhm.
this really beautiful lesson of trusting in the abundance of these flowers that if I cut them and I make little bouquets, then more show up the next day. It actually sends a message to the flower to grow more. And I love this. And also, I'm walking with vulnerability, and flowers are also a teacher in vulnerability. I'm growing vegetables too, but there's something really vulnerable about taking care of these plants
Mhm.
and wondering if they're going to bloom, what it
Right.
means about you if they don't. The tomatoes that I'm growing, is this going to be a mealy, dense tomato? Is it going to be delightful? Like, and not not making it mean anything about me if they don't, but being curious. But there's a vulnerability of, I know it sounds maybe crazy, but there's a vulnerability in trying, you know, and like saying, like, can I make these beautiful flowers, can I nurture them enough to make them grow? So it's really fascinating. And I'm enjoying the process and I'm learning a lot about myself as I do it. But my soul was like, this is what's next. You're going to learn to grow these things and see how it goes.
So think about that, right? And how much, oh gosh, it's just so, I could talk about this forever, but it is in these moments where we are present in our lives that we understand what we're actually meant to be learning and where we're actually meant to be.
Right.
So then when you have this idea, I should have this by this age, those two things don't go together. What
Mm-mm.
Ashley just shared, what you just shared, and the thought that you should have your life, that your life should look a certain way, oh my god,
Yeah.
those two energies could not be any more different.
Right. I wouldn't be open to it. I wouldn't have heard the calling, and then I wouldn't have been curious, and I wouldn't be listening. And I hear the messages like, this is about abundance. You're learning about abundance through working with
Mhm,
these flowers. And
mhm,
then the feeling of I'm growing too much and and all the things, but paying attention. And this is how life works. And it's as simple and
mhm.
complex is what we're talking about. But it is truly that simple and it can be that joyful. Like the soul doesn't send us like, go do this terrible thing and learn a lot through it. It's like, hey, how about we try this and see what the podcast? How about we
Right.
try the podcast and see how your voice evolves?
Mhm,
You
mhm,
know?
mhm. That takes me to point
Yes,
number
we could.
4, which is being busy or stressed out aren't a sign of success or value. So, again, a great segue because we live in a world. I think the idea of being busy and stressed out is starting to phase out. At
Yes.
least at least from what I can see, what I'm observing with clients. Um, but for so much of my life, that's where I needed to be because that is what, for some twisted reason, that's what felt successful. That's what, like,
Mm.
successful people are always busy and stressed.
Right? And working really hard.
That's so crazy. It's insane,
Right.
right? So, no way. I mean, I ended up burnt out with a stomach ulcer at the pit of my stomach at the age of 32, right? With a fried nervous system and having, like panic and anxiety attacks every so often.
No.
No,
Mm-mm.
no. And unwiring from that, I think, has been like my life's work for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And so this doesn't mean that personally, this doesn't mean that I'm never busy anymore, that I just live this very slow, loungy life. Are there seasons of my life where it looks like that? Yes. And I've even had to learn to be okay with that. But now, when there are seasons of my life that are busy, like the one that I'm living right now, it's so different because it's it's busy because there are things that I do need to do that I am doing, but I love them. They're intentional. They're aligned with who I am, with what I want to do. And what I hope to get from that or to connect with is not they're not the same things that I used to deem successful in the
No,
past.
no, no. It's time to put all of the busyness and the stressed out and the overworking and the hard working to bed. It's just time.
Yeah.
It's just time. I've literally made myself sick, like, like scary sick in times in my life, like you're talking about,
Mhm.
and being dizzy and panic attacks. And I just, at the last scare, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not. There's not going to, I mean, it's not that I don't hustle, but I don't hustle in the way we think of hustling. I show
Mhm.
up. I show up for what matters and what I need to and my responsibilities. And I also make sure that the things in my life I'm showing up for are things I love, like you. But I'm not willing to make myself sick for anyone. I'm over it.
Mhm.
Done.
Not worth it.
Not
Not worth
worth
it.
it.
Yeah. I think, our final point for today is I think it's my favorite, is your weirdness is your gift.
Yes. Yes.
What does that mean to you?
Oh, your authenticity.
Mhm.
Because I think our authentic natures are weird to the outside world. I
Yeah.
think they would be weird. And I can't tell you how much I was tamed and taught to be palatable and a watered down version of myself at such a young age. And I look at pictures of myself and I think I was a funny kid before it got literally like scared out of me. I think I was a funny kid with a like an outgoing personality. I think I've always been an introvert, but I know I was creative, but I just was too dissociated to nurture that, and I feel like now I think this new chapter is I'm getting to embrace my weirdness and be that,
Mhm.
and what is weird? I just think it's my authentic version of myself. Maybe it's talking about growing flowers and them teaching me about abundance and talking to them. Um, I don't know. I love it and I don't care.
Right.
What does it mean to you?
I think I mean, my weirdness, I think, has always been the ability to, or maybe not the ability, but just my connection to like the world and the universe, and the understanding that, just this very inherent understanding of, oh, everything does happen for a reason and everything is connected. And I when I was very young, there was this assumption that everyone thought that way. And then
Uh,
as I got older, I realized, oh no, they don't. They actually feel like it's just, you know, things just happen. Just because, and there's no reason and there's no connection and there's nothing to further look into and there's no synchronicity and or serendipity or any of that. And over time it kind of dampened that, and I was like this closeted witch, right?
I was just about to say, like, that's really what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like this closeted witch that worked in such stiff environments where it's no wonder I was so sad for most of the time.
Yeah.
And I remember that around my Saturn return, which was around 2015, 2016, I was still working in a law firm, and but I started talking about astrology more. And I knew that it was weird and I knew that people were saying shit. And I started caring less and less because it started just making more sense in my life. And the more, the more time that went on, the more that I talked about it. And interestingly, in 2017, I started working at the last firm I worked at. And my boss at that firm, she was all into astrology, into esoteric practices, and like, it was really interesting to me how as soon as I came out, my next job was aligned with a woman who's very kind and understood that, and she would let me practice readings on her like at lunch. It was
Mhm.
really interesting. Yeah. And honestly, when I finally quit, she was like, "Yeah, like this is time. This you're not meant to be here. You're meant to do that."
Mhm.
I remember having that exchange with her, but it was allowing my weirdness to come through and my philosophy on life and expressing it and being okay with people like thinking that I was weird. And then, by the way, I started spending a lot more time alone. People didn't want to hang out with me, which was totally okay with me. But your weirdness is your gift.
Absolutely. Do you have time for me to say one more thing?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah,
I don't know how, just real quick. But when you said witch, magic is my favorite word right now. It's just my
yeah.
favorite word. And I'm constantly imagining the magic with the universe and engaging with the magic within me. But one of my intentions for however long I have left here is to figure out just to experience how magical we actually are, to
Mhm.
like take it to a level of like breaking through the density of the human realm where I want sparks to fly out of my hands and
Mm.
like we're gonna start glowing. So yeah, I'm with you. And if I had been hanging out in LA, I would have come and hung out with you. I like your brand of weird. It's good.
I love that because I think that that's such a great thing to say, and I'm so glad that you said it because for everyone, just from an astrological perspective, like, please, 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 please just understand and remember that we are moving away from these obsolete, rigid ways of living. The astrology is going to support that. Is it going to come with people in power in a different way and all of that? Yes. But when you think about how you want to live your life as an individual, believing in the magic that you carry is no longer just something that is just a thought or like a funny conversation or no, like this is real.
It's real.
This is true. Your intuition is real and true. The ability to manifest is real and true. Your
Yes.
ability to connect with the people and the places that you're meant to be in is true.
Yeah.
But you have to allow yourself to have it. You have to
Yes.
allow it to be more true than anything else or as true as anything else in your life. This isn't just like something that we're talking about that we don't practice or exercise.
Right. Right.
Like this is a truth at our core. And to I really love that you said that because one of the things that it has come up for me recently is I want to surprise myself.
Yes.
I want to surprise myself and I want to witness my ability to manifest a vision that I have. And
Mhm.
that's no longer coming from a place where I'm crossing my fingers hoping it happens. It's coming from a place where I know that it's already done and that
Yes.
all I'm doing is aligning with my actions and my steps.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
And if everyone could just believe that in themselves, don't aim for perfect, don't aim like start where you are, take responsibility for yourself, for your actions, but really believe yourself possible of that vision
Yeah.
because it can happen and if you decide for it to happen, it will happen.
Yes. 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 Hallelujah. Amen. So be it, and so it is.
And so it is. Yeah, I love that. Um yeah, any last thoughts that you have?
No, I'm just being mindful of time because I know you
Yeah,
have a time constraint. So,
right, right.
yeah. So I will do part 2 next time, and I can't wait for that conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks so much everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Look forward to the next time.
Bye. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button and hit that notification bell to be updated on new videos.
Click the video on screen to watch more episodes.